our first guest, ladies and gentlemen, is comedian Chrissie Mayr. She's appeared on NBC's America's Got Talent, Fox's Laughs. I didn't even know that. Fox's Punchline, 2 shows I should have been on. That's what I think. As I read her intro, I'm like, why aren't I on that show?
What is it?
Am I that out of the fucking loop?
I've never heard of it.
Really? But I used to be in the show. Oh, that's rude. I'm introducing. She performs regularly at some of New York City's top comedy clubs and headlines nationally on tour. She can also be seen every Monday night hosting The Wet Spot, a sex, dating, relationship advice show on Compound Media. Oh, I thought it was about Dianne Feinstein's wheelchair seat. But anyway, come on. Come on. Please welcome to the show, Chrissie Mayr is with us. Hey, Chrissie,
Hello.
how are you?
Hi, oh, my gosh. We actually are going to have Dianne Feinstein's wheelchair seat on as a guest next week.
I look forward to that. Now, the reason why we have you on, Kurt and you have known each other for a while. I wasn't familiar with you until this clip was posted on Twitter. Now, we showed it to our subscribers, our premium members, on our premium streamium. We already talked about this. Now, I just want to say up front, so everybody knows 2 things. One thing is, I fully support trans people and don't think they should be discriminated against when it comes to employment or marriage or what's the other one? Housing. And that they should be treated with the same dignity and respect that you'd like to be treated. Okay. That used to qualify me as an ally. Now there's a lot more stuff you need to do these days to be an ally. But I think that I can go to sleep at night knowing that I would treat them with dignity and respect that I would want. Now that doesn't mean you can't make fun. You can't make jokes about issues. And as George Carlin said, he likes to make fun of any group who takes themselves too seriously. And you can't demand. Okay, so let's get to it. I have a lot of stuff to say about this. The other thing is, I really don't like talking about the trans issue on camera because I think it's made up. I think this is being pushed by elites. Like we had that guest on who talked about how Bill Gates funds this, and the new Twitter czar she had $100 million to push this at her last company, and so I think this is and the Democrats and corporations glom onto the trans LGBTQ Black Lives Matter because they don't give a shit about any of that stuff. But it doesn't cost them anything to virtue signal. And when the Democrats turned their back on the working class 30 years ago, that's when all we can do is talk about culture issues like that and make them more important than they actually are. Not that they're not important, but we make them the hyper focus instead of the things that can help everybody. So that's 2 things. But I'm going to talk about it because it comes right down my alley because it's coming into a comedy club, right? So now, I've been a comedian for at least 5 years. And so this happened, and I'm going to show it, and we'll talk about it afterwards with Chrissie.
Why has it been a year of girlhood and still no tits? That's day 1, okay?
So she's talking about Dylan Mulvaney. Why doesn't she have breasts? Okay. Or the funnier term, tits.
If I'm transitioning to a dude, day 1 I'm getting a cock. And I'm getting the biggest one you can find. Like, go into the back room, get me something black, okay? I have something to prove here.
Funny?
Why no tits for Dylan? I don't understand. Because he's a man. Because he's a man! Yeah, he can go tomorrow. He's a woman. We have one of those. I figured. No, it's all good. We can all have different beliefs. It's okay. Some of us can believe in reality and some of us can't. Coexist. This is America. We should have different beliefs. It's all good. It's all good. Binary, we didn't have bisexual, we didn't have as many labels. It was just like, oh, you're not bisexual, you're just fun at parties.
Another good joke.
She's just a good time.
So then they leave.
Just like the real Princeton, I've let in some people I shouldn't have. I've let in some people because they were real athletic. You know what I mean? I saw potential. I let in some people just because they were Puerto Rican. They can't all be white, right? You have to see yourself represented in the pamphlet, sir. You can't, right? Because you see yourself coming here. Fuck the transphobe! Is that the best you can do? Oh my God, I'm so sad. Make sure she gets home safe. I don't want those women to get harpooned in the neck on their way to their cars. I'm worried about their safety. There's poachers out there.
I rejected the
They're gonna want their tusks.
I rejected the notes.
They were fat though, and that did help.
No, those. So, in case you didn't follow along, she was making perfectly acceptable, hilarious jokes about if she was transgender. And for day one, she would have a huge black appendage, and she was making the white as in Dylan yet have female breasts, and that's a funny observation. That was very funny. It's not mean.
It didn't start over that. It started over the guy.
But then she asked the question rhetorically, why doesn't she have bigger breasts? And someone from the crowd yelled, because she's a guy, right? That's what happened. And then then you kind of backed that up by saying, then Chrissie backed it up by saying, you know, we all have different beliefs.
Just repeated what he said.
Yeah.
And then the girl goes, she's a woman. It became a real CNN roundtable.
Very round. Yes.
I know.
And so you then said, you know, well, some of us can be, you're trying, first of all, people don't understand. You have to entertain a room full of strangers with your mouth. Okay.
Yeah. And not in the way that you would think.
That's right. And so that is a unbelievably heavy burden, and people have no idea what it's like, right? And so now you got to somehow talk about things that are, you know, interesting, controversial, topical. You're doing it in a very funny way. And now someone who disagrees with what they think is your opinion now tries to sabotage your show and call you a name. Calls you a transphobe, which is the equivalent of calling you a racist or a sexist or some. It's a very negative thing to be called in the middle of your show. And they're trying to hurt your show. And so you came back with some very powerful insults. You made fun of their weight, which is fair game in a comedy club. I'm sorry. If you go to a comedy club, you know, it's a cliche. They make fun of your shirt. Hey, nice shirt. You know, where'd you get it? Mervin's?
If you interrupt the show, I got to work with what I have.
And if you interrupt the show,
that's what's going to happen.
That's right.
You got to work. You got to do whatever you can to get the show back and on your. So anyway, what happened after? So that's what happened. And what would you like to say before I go take it anywhere?
Oh no, you've described it perfectly, Jimmy. And even the last couple weeks when this has been trending, which has been great, and I'm happy that I was able to do the job with the heckler that I did, because as you all know, or anybody who's been on stage, anytime you deal with a heckler, it's like, well, this could be funny, or this could also fall flat. Because the room, it's like, I can't go back to that joke I was doing. I can't finish tagging it or whatever.
Right.
And your idea of your order is kind of messed up. So, and then you have to basically reset the whole room. It's not as if they're a cold audience, but everyone is super distracted. That's why I saw them getting up and leaving. And I'm looking over, I'm going, okay, maybe 2 tables are seeing them leave. For me, that's not worth announcing it to the whole crowd. I'm like,
That's
only
great.
a couple.
Right.
I was like, you know, because we all make these quick decisions. Like, am I going to be like, oh, you're leaving now? And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to finish my bit. You know, like, they yelled at the one thing. They can leave. They are free to leave. I hope they paid their tab. I hope they tipped the wait staff, but they're free to leave. And it wasn't until they yelled out what they yelled out where I was like, in my head, I'm like, oh, come on. And I really did feel like that you're sitting there 10, 15 minutes stewing in your own juices, and F you transphobe is truly the best you can do. You've had all this time to think of a witty comeback or something, or like, tell me I'm anything. And then, you know, and I'm not great. This sounds bad, but I'm not great with conflict. I think that's why I do stand up, is because I have the freedom to say what I want, because I grew up in like a tense, maybe alcoholic household. So my heart is beating so fast. and I'm thinking like, what do I want to clap back, but I also am worried that they will rush the stage. Like I'm worried they're going to throw something at me, throw something at someone else.
Of
like,
course.
They're all huge, these women. And I'm like, who knows if this crowd would be there for me? Who knows if anybody would have my back? I don't know where the bouncers are. I don't even know if there are bouncers. Like I love hyenas. They're great. I know I heard after the fact that there was a guy in the back who, as soon as she yelled out, he did kind of walk to the side and just started to watch her, which is very good. So the club like did everything they could have done to de-escalate, I guess. And so she said what she said, and I was like, damn, she really might rush the stage and attack me. Like, I don't know what I would do. And then later on, somebody in the crowd was like, well, I was on safari once, and if a rhino is chasing after you, you should run in a zigzag pattern, which had me dying because he said that to me on stage. I was like, oh, okay, I'll run in a zigzag pattern. I point to somebody, you throw your nachos at them, you try to grab their ankles. Like as a group, we all could have handled the situation. So it ended up being really good. And then I rush out to go shake people's hands, like as you do at the end of every show. I rush into the green room, grab my wallet because I'm like, okay, I got to sell some shirts. And I get to the merch table and it's all like devastated. It's all like messed up looking. And I said to the door guy, I was like, what happened to they're like, oh yeah, they pushed your shirts off the table. And I said stampede, clever, being clever with my words. They didn't
straight at your merch.
They didn't run through the table, but they did push all the merch to the ground, and the guy had to pick it up, and none of it was folded by the time I got out there. So I was like, wow. I was like, are they just upset that I don't carry 3X? Like, why push over somebody's merch like that? Are they upset that I don't carry tarps? Like, what? Why take it out on the shirts?
I rejected the now.
Well, you know what? I think, Chrissie, what I'm totally enjoying about the whole exchange is there's a whole group of people that have no idea about Don Rickles. They have no idea of like what his comedy was and why you went there, because you couldn't wait to see how he was going to trash people or how explosive he was going to be on stage, and you really delivered.
Wait, but they're not. The thing that set them off is amazing to me. Did you dream that the Bud Light controversy would touch your life so personally?
I really didn't.
If Dylan Mulvaney's a woman. That's what kicked this off. Your jokes were going over.
Your jokes were going over.
It was your social fight somehow became the thing.
And your jokes weren't mean. Your jokes were just great jokes. And they're more about you than Dylan Mulvaney. They're about you. And then someone from the crowd said, because she's a man.
Not you.
Not you said that. And then when they heckled you, then you said, well, some of us, you could all have different. And then you had to come back with it. But so what? Not that it even matters.
It was like, tastes great, less filling.
What your personal belief is on that. But do you mind if I ask what your personal belief is on that?
Yeah.
You're a vagina.
One of my YouTube moderators is trans. I had a trans person in my improv group, and like before I even started stand up, like when I first started stand up, I was very lefty. I was a feminist. I was, would have never voted for Trump in a million years. I had a monthly show at the Stonewall Inn in New York City for 6 years.
No kidding.
For 6 years, which like in New York City time is an eternity.
The irony of this.
It really is. And so I would be booking on that show. I took it from nothing to a Time Out New York, best whatever written up. It was in the New York Comedy Festival 2 or 3 times. I would have Cellar comics run over, like a Jessica Kirson or whoever, someone like Kurt, someone like you, anybody who was at Cellar, come over, do Stonewall. It was first Saturday of the month. And then I would be actively scouting up and coming LGBT comics because, I was just like, oh, it was a great show. And then in 2018, my mom dies. I was like, I gotta do more. I gotta get on more podcasts. I just have to like put all this energy into something productive. And then I pitch a show to Compound Media. I get a show in Compound Media in 2019. So in a very short period of time, I go from monthly show at Stonewall to weekly show at Compound. I couldn't keep doing both. And my sense of humor didn't change. My politics didn't change that much. I would, in many areas, I would still be considered like a 90s liberal or whatever on certain things, like maybe more on immigration. I've gone more right. maybe a little bit more conservative on some other things, but like didn't. And then I just noticed such a drastic difference into who would respond to me, who was getting back to me, who would pretend that I was dead to them. Like the treatment from the New York City comedy community changed drastically just from going to a Stonewall show to a weekly at Compound Media show. And then in the next couple of years, I was an out Trump voter. I was at January 6th. I named my album Live from January 6th. So a few things happened where I feel like I was steadily like pushed away from the sort of comedy community. I remember after January 6th, there was people were saying we need to make a list of every comedian that was there that day so we can put them on a blacklist and never book them again. You know, we have to put all the Trump voters on a blacklist. Like it was rough for a minute. Just a couple of, I don't know, like, I don't want to say they're nobodies, but like I don't really remember their names.
Is it like some like Brooklyn horseshit?
Yes, exactly. There was a Brooklyn booker who on January 6th, I got out one tweet like we're walking to the Capitol, and this one booker was who I worked with a couple of times. She booked me on like Shtick or Treat, which was like a big show that happened every year in New York City at the Knitting Factory. Like I remember the last time I did it, I did like a decent Michelle Wolf impression. Anyway, so she tweets out like, I don't know what the comics in LA are doing, but in New York, they're storming the Capitol. And I was like, I can't believe you're using this to virtue signal. Like it was so ridiculous and we couldn't even respond. The reception was so bad that day. And the last couple of years, there's just been so many moments of like, oh, wow. Like depending on where your political opinions are, you will be like, pretty much totally cast out of this community.
Well, I experienced it also when I wouldn't vote for Hillary Clinton, and I wouldn't stop telling the truth about how they cheated Bernie Sanders and how both these parties are a lie. And so for that, if you tell the truth about the Democrats, then you're helping fascism, even though the Democratic Party is 100% fascism, and the Republican and the Democrats serve the same exact people. As Ralph Nader taught us, the only difference between a Democrat and a Republican is how fast their knee hits the floor when a donor enters the room. And if it wasn't,
is that a blowjob joke?
Yeah. And if Joe Biden wasn't president and a Republican was president when that railroad strike happened, both of them would have crushed the railroad strike. So Joe Biden did it, and the Democrats went along with it. They all went along with it. And so they're all fat. So this is all theater, just like most of this trans arguments, all that Black Lives Matter. That was They all said they were upset at the cops, and then they all went and voted in a new $2 billion for a new police force. They were all lying. Black Lives. There was all bullshit. And we're living in one big FBI CIA psyop. And that's what January 6th was. They tried to your country was stolen from you decades ago, assholes. It wasn't stolen by a bunch of yahoos, pajama bottoms, and a buffalo helmet stealing a podium. And half of them were egged on into going into the Capitol by the FBI plants, which we now know there were hundreds, and Secret Service also. And the other ones were let in by the cops because they didn't have any cops there at all. I did a rally. We did a Force to Vote rally a year earlier. They had more cops there for 50 of Force to Vote rally people showing up than they did they knew thousands of people were going to be there, and they knew it for weeks. And so they on purpose. So anyway, I don't even want to get into it. But the whole idea that they call me right wing now, Chrissie, because I'm still against censorship, which is a hallmark of being a liberal and a lefty, is being against. And as RFK Jr. said on the show, can you remember a time in history when the people doing the censoring were the good guys? Can you ever remember? There's never been. And can you ever point to a problem in history that censorship fixed? That or isn't, right? Yeah. And so now the people who I used to be friends with in comedy, who I thought were liberals and lefties, have turned into unbelievable authoritarians, not only around censorship and free speech, but also around COVID and lockdowns and mandating experimental medical treatments from the. It's just, they became unbelievable fascist, right-wing, crazy authoritarians, and then they called me right-wing because I stayed true to my values. Do you feel like the same thing happened to you?
I feel like you're singing my whole song like this. I
Why?
feel
Because you
like
don't trust science.
I don't trust. I feel
Science
like
can't even tell us what a woman is.
oh my gosh, it's insane. It's so insane. It's so authoritarianist or ism. I don't know. I just remember when De Blasio said, it was in August. I guess it was, what was it, August of 21, where he put down the mandates and was like, nobody can perform or go into any type of entertainment venue unless they're jabbed. And I was like, well, I guess I'm done performing in New York City. Goodbye, everyone. I guess I'm just going to do Florida and Texas and try to make a life for myself on the road. And then I thought, so I tweet that out there. I sort of like take a stand. I would be the world's biggest hypocrite to not take that stand. And it felt good to do in the moment. And I thought, oh, surely many of my fellow comedians will be saying the same. Nope. It was like virtual crickets. And then I learned the hard lesson of like, most comedians are like just out for themselves. A lot of them are not passionate about free speech. They just want to get rich. They just want to get famous. They'll use a fake Vax card to do what they have to do to get in, to perform where they have to get in.
I'm all
and I was
for
like,
this.
wow.
Yeah, you didn't know about fake vax cards?
I'm all for that, by the way. To me, I feel like you're screwing over the system. And so I'm for that. And you're showing them how ridiculous it is. But the thing that kills me more than anything, Chrissie, is how those people who are that called us those names and were wrong about COVID, and they believed the propaganda that was coming directly from Big Pharma through the FDA, the CDC, and the corporate-owned media that's owned by Big Pharma to the tune of 75% of their corporate news budget. They were just uncritically. That's the thing about comedians are supposed to be skeptics. Even cynics were supposed to be, but they had the way I talk about it is that comedians who I know who still don't think we landed on the moon and still think Elvis is alive had no questions about COVID or the vaccines or the mandates or the lockdowns. And if you did, you were a bad person, and it was their moral duty to ostracize you from society. Did you experience that, right?
Yes, with so many things. And it just was crazy. Yeah, calling us, selfish, you're killing grandma. And this might be a rumor. I heard that Judah Friedlander still won't even do comedy shows in person. I heard he only still does Zoom shows. That was shocking to me to learn. And who knows how many other people are like, every once in a while, like you meet somebody who's still doing the fist pump. And I'm just like, one of my favorite things over the pandemic, I opened for Adam Carolla at maybe it was the Skyline or maybe it was Appleton, Wisconsin or something. And he's like, yeah, I don't care. I'm shaking hands. I'm eating. I'm licking my hands. I'm shaking hands. I'm hugging people. I'm like, I don't care. I'm not really a big soap guy. I was like, yes, it's so refreshing.
So I don't know how this went from I
don't know if he said he was licking his hands and shit, like shaking. He was just saying, I'm meeting people. Like, I like that he didn't care about
But
terms.
the fact that those people will not apologize now, and the fact that I still see them in comedy clubs still wearing a mask. Still, even though it's been proven over and over and over that masking at the population level doesn't make a difference and that we're all going to get COVID no matter if you wear a mask or not. It's like trying to mask your way out of ever getting a cold again for the rest of your life. You can maybe sit in a closet with an N95 mask on and accomplish that, but that's not any kind of a life. And by the way, you're being misinformed on what Omicron is right now because it presents as a cold. And I've had it 3 times, and that's exactly what it is. And so and they're still treating it like it's AIDS. And by the way,
mask at this point, has become like a blankie. It's like a security blanket.
It's a blue state burqa.
It's a blue state burqa. Yeah, that's a perfect way to put it, Kurt.
It's a Democrat MAGA hat, basically.
So let me just, and those people will never apologize, here's what I say, Chrissie, is I can forgive them for being wrong. No problem. I can forgive them. If they asked for my forgiveness, I would say sure. But they'll never forgive us for being right.
Nope.
They'll never forgive us for being right about COVID, ever. And you're talking about, so anyway, and I don't know anything about how Judah Friedlander handled COVID. I love Judah Friedlander's. I think he's a sweetheart of a guy. And so, but you can have different views about COVID. That's okay. And you can have different, but just don't condemn people who question the status quo, push back and question authority. You know, I've seen so many stupid jokes about COVID. One of the dumbest jokes about COVID is the guy who says, my brother doesn't want to take the vaccine because he doesn't know what's in the vaccine and he's going to do his own research. And I'm like, you're a moron. You have to trust science. I have to trust the science that my zipper works and my schlong isn't hanging out at the Starbucks. Well, you don't have to trust the science. You could just look. You could just look to see.
That's the joke?
Do you really? Yes.
That's
do you really go
That's engineering. That's not
I
science.
saw people tweeting that joke out as if it was brilliant. You don't, when you go to the Starbucks, you don't have to cross your fingers and hope your schlong isn't out. You just look. Just like that. So what they wanted you to do when they say trust science, they want you to have blind faith in science, which is the opposite of science. That's not science. That's religion. So they treated the vaccines and the COVID policy from Big Pharma as religion, and they cloaked it as science. Trust the science. You don't trust science. Science is to be questioned, and they'll never forget. They'll never forgive us for being right. And so I just have to, it breaks my heart kind of because I love those people because they're all very funny, right? I love their comedy and I loved hanging out with them because they're funny, but they're just fucking maniacs. And it just showed you when Hitler takes over, the same shit happens. And those people would not have stood up to Hitler. They would have gone along. It's called mass formation. They would not have stood up. They went immediately to wanting people to be sent to death camp. Chomsky himself said that they should be separated from, unvaxxed should be separated from society. And when he was asked, what are they going to do about food and water? He goes, that's their problem. So the people who are supposed to know better, the comedians, the artists, the people like Chomsky, the activists, the people who have a sense of the people who were supposed to stand up against this didn't. And it fell on the shoulders of idiots like me and you that were fucking comedians who actually had a sense of history and a spine and a sense of integrity. Once I knew the truth about all that stuff, I couldn't shut up. Anyway, I don't know why this guy. This one, I was supposed to talk about trans stuff with you, but it really
let's talk about trans.
But I have to tell people that the vax is safe and effective.
Very effective.
Oh
very
my God!
safe.
And it'll keep you from getting seriously ill, death, or in the hospital.
Get all the boosters you possibly can. Get them all at once.
Kurt eats the 4 boosters for breakfast.
I just had one before I came in.
And if his heart is inflamed and swelled, it's with pride at how good that vaccine works.
Pride and disgust at Chrissie.
That's right.
You know, I was saying on one of these other shows, it's like, I don't think this was like a particularly special heckle moment. And the things I was saying back, like, some fat jokes, but I think it got the response it did because sometimes comedy is just saying the honest thing in the moment. And there's so few places you can get honesty now because we're surrounded by propaganda that the comedy club is really like one of the last places where you can just like say how you feel and also laugh at what you want to laugh at. And this woman represents a group of people who want to control what you laugh at and control your thoughts and control your speech.
That's exactly right. That's exactly what that is. And let's say, for instance, that you didn't run a show at Stonewall, that you didn't have a transgender, but that she didn't have any idea who you were. But let's say you actually, there's lots of people who don't think Dylan Mulvaney is a woman. The way you address that, if you could see that as a problem, is that you use the power of persuasion to try to convince those people. And then you engage with those people. When I was at an anti-war rally earlier this year, and I was talking to a gay black guy, and there was a lot of people who were boycotting this anti-war rally because there was some people who they considered anti-LGBTQ speaking at that event. Well, the gay guy, the black gay guy, said, well, the solution to that is to go to the event, engage with those people. So then when they engage with me, they see that I am different than the idea that they have the caricature of a gay person they have in their head. And that's exactly why gay people went from being ostracized and demonized in our culture to being full-fledged a part of our first-class citizens quicker than any social movement ever happened. And it was because they used good power of persuasion. They would show you that gay people are your favorite teacher, your favorite coach, your butcher, every type of person was gay, and that they should be treated with dignity and respect. And that's how so now when they want to call someone who they think has a different opinion than them, a comedian like you, they want to call you a name. They want to knock over your merch table. They want to be violent with you. They want to shut you down. They want to censor you and they want to cancel you is what they want. That is the opposite of a political outreach campaign. And so what all they're doing, all these trans activists are doing is building up resentment by calling people phobes and trying to get Dave Chappelle canceled and trying to make sure his shows don't happen. That is the opposite of political outreach. And that's what I'm here to tell. You're on the side of the trans community. I'm on the side of the trans community. I'm telling you that's bad tactics, and that's going to get a big backlash. And we're already seeing the backlash. And people if someone has the opposite idea and doesn't think that Dylan Mulvaney is a real woman, then it's up to you to convince that person. And by ostracizing them, calling them a name, and trying to get them canceled, that's not going to get you an outcome you want. If you want inclusion and people to think like you, that's the opposite way to go about it. And it was just 5 minutes ago, Joe Biden and Barack Obama were against gay marriage.
I know that's
Yeah.
5 minutes ago, Barack Obama and Joe Biden were against gay marriage, and they came around on that. They didn't come around because the gay community started trying to get their speeches canceled. Okay.
It's tough to believe that they have the moral high ground when they're the same group of people that's like really wants to twerk in front of kids. You know, it's like,
you know what, Chrissie?
Right.
I think maybe you're just jealous because penis is the new vagina and vagina is the new butthole.
I guess it is.
So that's another thing. Like I always loved drag queens. I was always down for the drag, but there is definitely a discussion to be had when you're going to start mixing that stuff with children. There's definitely a discussion to be had, and somebody who has questions about that, again, the way you win that person over is to not call them names or a phobe or whatever because they have a concern. That's the exact opposite. And it's not going to work. In fact, it won't work. It's not working. They already lost the argument for sports. It's lost. And I just wanted to go over this real quick. So gender dysphoria is the feeling of a discomfort or distress that might occur in people whose gender identity differs from their sex assigned at birth or sex-related physical characteristics. So that's called gender dysphoria. The feeling or discomfort or distress that might occur in people whose gender identity differs. So if they have a penis and then they kind of feel feminine or female, or if they have a vagina and they kind of feel male, that would be that. And that's called gender dysphoria. And that is from Mayo Clinic. That's called gender dysphoria. Now, the gender dysphoria is a diagnosis that's included in the DSM as a mental illness. That's a diagnosis for gender dysphoria is included in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, a manual published by the American Psychiatric Association.
So wait, as bad as his disorder? Is that what the...
I'm just telling you what it says in the... That's what the...
That's how you get insurance to pay for it. It's got to be a disorder. I know people like, that's not an illness. Like, well, who's...
Oh, so that's how you get insurance to pay for it?
Like, what are you going to say? There's nothing wrong with me and they're going to pay for it? Like, but I don't think... I'm not saying it's a scam to call it that. I'm just saying there's an argument about saying it's an illness, but I think...
I'm saying it's in the DSM.
Yeah.
Maybe they need a handicap placard. They just need a...
It says right there, Kurt, it says the diagnosis was created to help people with gender dysphoria get access to necessary health care and effective treatment.
I guess it says exactly that.
But get this. Look at this, Kurt and Chrissie and everyone else. How rare is this? According to the DSM, the prevalence of gender dysphoria is 0.005 to 0.014% of adult natal males and 0.002 to 0.003% for adult natal. It seems like such a minuscule section of the population. You would think it was 40% of the population the way it's dominating the news headlines now. And you would think every other kid is gender dysphoric.
it's almost like how when people were having trouble with pain management and how many people legit needed Oxycontin versus who got Oxycontin, or Adderall versus who's getting it.
Oh, right.
I mean, this is a big, there was a video of it. I don't know if you played it or who played it, but they talk openly about how much money this brings in, doing all this new care. When you're like, what is gender affirming care? Like, what is that? Well, okay, it's a wide range of things, all of which are very expensive and insurance will pay for. And you set up clinics and it's a money maker. So it's like whenever kids started getting nose jobs, I remember happened a while back. It's the same kind of thing. Like, this is a hot new medical treatment.
Well, this is my theory on why Dylan is so hot right now, because I think Dylan is here, much like the Kardashians ushered in a decade of BBLs and contouring, and like their look was very prevalent and popular. I think Dylan is here to usher in a decade of like androgyny being kind of in vogue, top surgeries, facial feminization surgery, just like idea of being sort of like thin and flat and sort of, are they male? Are they female? Who knows? I think that is what Dylan is here to push. Like, I think that Dylan's here to push those surgeries and sell that look.
Well, also, I bet because who paid for it? Like, I never heard of this person. They were like loaded. That's such an AstroTurf character. But isn't that all that ESG thing is? That's how you keep your credit lines open. All these businesses, they got to get a line of credit from whatever.
What does ESG stand for?
Environmental Social Governance, and you get a score. So if you don't have scores high enough, they won't give you the credit. It's kind of a little shakedown situation, and that's BlackRock, and they're investing in all these companies.
And this is all because this is all a distract. So Chomsky also said the way to undermine. I'm going to paraphrase: the way to undermine democracy is with distraction. And that's exactly what all this is. This is distraction, just like Russiagate was distraction from democracy. They didn't want you to know that Americans weren't willing to vote for the Democrats or Republicans anymore, that they were willing to vote for a game show host over horrible Hillary Clinton. They didn't want you to know that, so they had to pretend that it was Russia that did that. It wasn't that the people were done with the establishment, which is what that was. And then all my asshole comedy friends went along with Russiagate because they're fucking brain dead and they don't know what it's like to be an anti-establishment, anti-authoritarian person or an artist. They just repeat pablum. It's the opposite of art, which is why the arts were the worst when it came to COVID. They were the biggest Nazis, and they still are the biggest. As they wag their finger at MAGA for being anti-science, they're still demanding vax requirements on movie sets and TV sets. It's the craziest thing. Chrissy, I know I'm talking too much.
Oh yeah, you're right. Any one of my fellow comedian friends would give their left nut to don a vaccine costume and be in the background of a Stephen Colbert bit. You know, it's like there's no scruples with these people.
There isn't. So what did you find out about how many people identify as trans?
3.
So Pew Research says 5% of people identify as non-binary or trans. No, as trans. That's crazy.
There's no way there's
no way. And then but
you could lump all the stuff together, maybe, right?
All the but then Reuters says that 0.5% of adults identify as trans and 1.4% of the youth does. Now that's like a quadrupling. I'm not a math science surgeon, but that's almost a quadrupling or a tripling from adults to children. And so that would imply culture is having something to do with people doing this. And again, I think there's a legitimate conversation to have. You know, in California, Chrissy, they won't allow children to use a tanning bed until they're 18, even with the consent of their parents. It's against the law.
Yeah, no tattoos either, I'm sure.
But somehow they're allowed to do all this gender, all that stuff, to get the hormone blockers and stuff when they're 12. It's to me that at least deserves a big conversation, and that people who have questions about that aren't a phobe.
I legalized tattoos for children if I could.
It's crazy. You can't drink, you can't get a tattoo, but you can turn your pole into a hole. Wow.
It seems inconsistent at very least, and contradictory. It seems contradictory, and I stress the dick in that word, and it seems. Go ahead, Kurt.
How common is it to give hormones to adult men? You know, like TRT is a like a mild steroid. That's what they just prescribe to men now. Over
Really?
A certain age. Yeah, get your Remember when all the testosterone lotions and stuff was coming out?
Yeah.
Because you have low T,
Yeah.
which is I'm sure is a marketing term and not a
Yeah.
medical thing.
Joe Rogan takes tea.
Yeah,
even that guy takes tea.
I don't get. I
So
mean,
does
go ahead and take
Kumia.
it,
He
but-
loves it.
Who does?
Kumia.
Yeah,
Oh,
that
okay.
stuff,
Kumia.
like-
Yeah.
That stuff is very like that's a lot of money. It's making a lot of money, and there's always a new. And my friend who got on it told me the range where you're like, oh, you qualify. It sounded like a wide range of testosterone qualifies. Like it doesn't sound like you have to be at that low. It sounds like you could be like just a lot of people luckily qualify for this thing.
So, well, Chrissy, we got to wrap. I could talk for 3 hours about all this stuff. You're a real delight to talk to. Thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
And you do the Chrissie Mayr podcast. It wasn't in my bio for you, but
That's okay. Yes, I do a podcast here and there. I'll interview people, and I have a show called The Simcast Sundays at 9 p.m. Eastern on my YouTube channel. And then, of course, my show on Compound Media Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern. And then I have a couple of dates coming up. I'll be in Jersey, Tiffs, Morris Plains, July 8th. I think I'll be in Richmond, Virginia, August 9th, and Houston, August 11th.
oh, going back to the belly of the beast, Texas, going to take on some more of those.
Right? Yeah, diving in.
So now, do you live in New York?
Yes.
And how did things come back? How are your friendships now after COVID?
The friendships, not so much. Mostly just internet friends and people who live out of state. There are a couple of comedy clubs who will have me if I need to do a spot here and there. It's okay. I'm like 45 minutes outside of the city, so I have some running around space.
Okay, well, thanks for coming on, and I think I hope we address this in a way that was useful to everybody. I hope, we're not trying to exploit it. I don't even like to talk about it because I think it's being manufactured to keep us distracted from the fact that the establishment's actually screwing us over hard economically every time we turn around. We're still the only country that doesn't have health care. How do you have you you look pretty young though, so you probably haven't had any big health care scares, huh?
I haven't had health insurance. Well, I lost my job because I wouldn't get the jab. Then that was December of 21, and I have just been trying to lay low and not go snowboarding. But I'm getting married soon, so I'll probably jump on my fiance's insurance. But yeah.
Okay.
It's been fun.
Your fiance, huh? What's her name? Come on.
It's an old-fashioned marriage to a man.
Come on. What is that? All right, Chrissie Mayr,
What even
thank
is
you.
a man?
I'm gonna find out
All
on
right.
my wedding night.
Okay. All right. I hope I run into you sometime soon.
Yes, definitely. Thank you so much for having me. This was so
Okay.
much fun.
Check out my new stand-up special, COVID Lies Are Funny, at jimmydore.com. Only $10. Become a premium member. We're going to be on tour in Northampton, Massachusetts, Syracuse, Cohoes, New York, Hartford, Los Angeles, Bakersfield, California, Baltimore, Maryland, and San Francisco, California. Plus, did we say Chicago? There's lots of stuff. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets. See you there.